Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the February edition of Building a Winning Team. And I am very excited to be here today with our guest, Kolby Goodman. I am Trevor Blair, founder and CEO of Blair Search Partners, and our managing director, Tori Albertazzi, will also be joining today. So we'll have a really fun, dynamic three-way conversation. Again, by way of introduction, Blair Search Partners works with nonprofit organizations and public agencies all over the country to fill a variety of positions. And while our work is rooted in the nonprofit space, today's conversation will have applicability for, I think, anyone in any sector, whether you're going into the for-profit sector, the nonprofit sector, the public sector. The strategies, the tips, the tactics, and most importantly, as Kolby will get into, is the mindset is the same. You're just applying these strategies and tactics and mindset to different sectors of the economy. So no matter where you're at in your career or what career you might be looking to get into, again, you're going to hear a lot about career pivots from Kolby today. I think that'll be a big focus of our conversation. Everyone will have lots of takeaways, I think, from today's conversation. Tori, anything I missed on that before we jump into Kolby's intro? Anything else you'd like to add?
No, we're excited to get started and hear from you, Kolby. I will add to the audience today, feel free to drop comments in on LinkedIn if we have time. Comments or questions, have time to get to them, we certainly will. If not, we can follow up after.
Awesome. Okay. Thanks, Tori. Kolby, here's where we get to talk about you with you just sitting right there. Not awkward at all. All right, but this is a beautifully written bio. So I'm going to go ahead and give this a read. Kolby Goodman is a seasoned career development expert, coach, speaker, and author who has partnered with over 4,000 professionals. He helps those at career crossroads stop seeing themselves as simply being job doers and evolve into being in-demand problem solvers so they can find more excitement, deeper purpose, and get paid more in their careers. Who doesn't want that, right? Kolby's expertise has been leveraged by leaders to land amazing roles at a diverse set of high-profile companies, including Apple, Meta, Netflix, Deloitte, Amazon, Sony, and the NFL. Wow. Where they've been able to ascend in their organizations, solve bigger and more interesting problems, and have a bigger business and people impact. Kolby's first book, Employed by Graduation, is being used by multiple universities in their own curriculum, and his newest book, Employed by Graduation, the Parent Edition, is out now. And let me tell you, when I first saw Kolby speak, that is actually one of the things that struck me is why didn't this stuff exist when I was going to college? Because I remember as a junior walking into the Career Center for the first time, granted this was when it was all in hard copy, and just being so lost. And there was, there were basically two paths. Those kids who DIY'd it and just figured out how to use the Career Center. And those kids who just drifted because career prep and exploration and readiness was not part of the college curriculum.
Yeah.
Right. And it should be. Now, when you get to grad school, if you're doing something like an MBA, it's a little different. But in the undergrad world, at least during my time, there was nothing. So hopefully that has changed a lot today, and we'll talk about that. But Kolby, welcome to the show. We're excited to have you here. I would love to hear about what brought you to this work and what has sort of shaped your worldview on career transition, right? Because what struck me is you have a very holistic approach that starts with the heart and mind, and then you build out from there, right? And you can't look outward until you've done some deep looking inward.
Inside. Yeah.
So I would love to hear your thoughts on that, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah. So I first of all, I appreciate you guys having me here, everybody live here today and watching the replay. You have a lot of things to do with your time, a lot of options you can take, and I'm glad to hear that you're spending it with us here today. My kind of origin story starts back in my very first job after graduation. I was working in the help desk at answering the phones, resetting passwords. I was the IT person, one of many. And I'd worked my butt off for an entire year, stayed overtime, did the grunt work, crawled underneath the desks, all the things that you'd ever want out of a fresh-faced, green, new hire. And I went into that first interview and I thought I was going to kill it. I thought I was going to get the promotion from junior to mid-level. I thought I was going to get that $1.25 hour raise. And I thought I had the rocket strapped to my back because I had followed the formula. work hard, keep your head down, get rewarded. And I went into that interview and got the dreaded meets expectations. And I had this really early come to Jesus moment about how I was going to navigate my career. Because at that point I was getting literally dizzy as I went back to my desk thinking, I can't do this for 40 plus more years. Something has to change. And so as I did some good inner work, kind of probably questioned a lot of my life choices up until that moment, thought, okay, how do I get myself ahead? How do I make the most impact? And being a graduate of San Diego State in the economics department, taking a lot of psychology and consumer behavior classes, what I realized is that what people recognize and what people will pay for is not a job to be done, but impact to be experienced. And it was that early on to say, yes, I can reset the passwords. I can set up the laptops. But if I don't understand how this impacts the people around me, the business, underneath me, then I'm not going to be able to fully realize my potential. And it was early on where I was able to do that, sprinkle in innate and developed EQ, which unfortunately is not super prevalent in a lot of IT departments. And it helped me rise to the ranks relatively quickly. Now, fast forward a handful of years where I was kind of at the end of my tenure in IT operations management, where I realized I was working on projects I didn't care about with people I could not stand, making people I've never met a bunch of money. And I said, this is not the value I want to put into the world. And so doing some self-evaluation, understanding that revelation that I had early in my career and the way that I went about it in terms of my ability to develop relationships, to sell myself on the page, on the screen, in the room, to leverage my abilities and my expertises on the job was not something everybody was doing innately. Was able to kind of package up that, productize that, and took on my first 10 clients for free, just going on to Facebook groups and Nextdoor and saying, this is what I do, meet me at Starbucks. Fast forward 12 years, 4,000 people, 200 keynotes later, here we are.
Wow. What a great story. Let's talk about the nonprofit sector specifically, if we could, for a moment, because I recall, and I think that was just coincidental. We ended up spending a lot of time on that subject during that seminar back in 2025. And I think about it because one of the opening questions was around, how do I even find out what I want to do next, right? And you had some pretty powerful and pretty insightful advice, again, for folks in all sectors, not necessarily just for the nonprofit sector. But and I even wrote down one of your quotes. It's not, how do I find what I'm good at? It should be, how am I adding value to people's lives? And putting that at the center of your career pivot, your career transition. Can you expand on that a little bit for us?
Yeah, absolutely. Because you're going to be recognized, compensated, you're going to have influence based on the impact that you have. Your skills, your abilities, your purpose in a vacuum doesn't really have a lot of value. But when you think about your ability to go out there and impact the people, the decision makers, you have this ability to not only inform them of what you can do, but you force them to have an emotional reaction to how you can help them. And what I coach my clients on is, yes, we need to inform your next employer about all this great things that you can do. But above all else, we need them to have a sense of relief. Thank God we found Trevor. Thank God we found Tori, right? Because that visceral reaction is going to get them to take action. And so the problem with this, though, is that our superpowers, to us, they don't feel super. Because we're just really good at them. They become habitualized. They become second nature. And so you're going to have to do some good inner exploration, as well as, surveying of the people around you to help understand how you've been able to have an impact on them, not only as somebody in your title, but also as a fellow human being.
Yeah, and it's a deep level, right? It's not where our brains intuitively take us. Tori, you were going to say something?
Yeah. On that same note, Kolby, what about the reverse? for the self, the individual. You want to make an impact for the organization that you're seeking to join, for the leadership that you are hoping to work for and with. What about the you still? So not losing sight of what you need and the impact you hope that that organization will have on you, your individual growth, your individual impact into the larger community, the larger organization.
It's about really getting clear what you need in order to thrive. Right? And where do you need the feedback? Where do you want the support? How does it look like? And being very clear on that. I think with that, being flexible so that all parties can kind of meet in the middle. But just knowing that, like, I'm not here to simply just be a human robot to drive mission, vision, costs. Right. And so the more that you know what you want out of this next role, out of that particular leader, out of getting exposed to these opportunities and these challenges, that'll help you seek that out. I think what I tell my clients is, you're not looking for a job. You're looking to solve the right problems with the right people. And that then helps you hyper focus in on, what are the fires I want to run towards, and who's going to run towards those fires with me.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about the lizard brain for a minute,
Okay.
Right? And by that, I mean gut reaction, basic biology, right? Because our basic biology, how we are wired as animals, drives a lot of our behavior, particularly when it comes to career choices, right? And that lizard brain, that fight or flight, that worst case scenario that we keep waking up with at 2 a.m, can drive a negative spiral and thought patterns. And I really liked what you shared around the worst first strategy. And rather than trying, what that seemed to me was, look, we can't go against basic biology. Human brains are wired the way we are. So instead, let's go with that. The lizard brain is always the first to react, right? Any kind of stimulus or input comes at us, lizard brain reacts first, and then the rest of our brain catches up and does the higher level processing, right? And you had I thought, some really powerful advice, because sometimes career changes are devastating, right? A lot of times you're not making a career choice by choice, or a career move by choice, right? And it can really rock us to our core. And your worst first strategy, to me, said, look, you can't fight the lizard brain, deal with that first, and then get on to the higher level processing and move forward on a much more positive note. So if you could expand on that worst first, it's so good.
Yeah, it is high school physiology, right? Like, our brains are designed to keep us alive, but in such will do a really good job of preventing us from thriving. And so as you approach these worst case scenarios, making sure that you're, I think, plotting them out. When I talk out my crazies to my wife or my confidants, or anybody that'll listen, honestly, it gives me kind of two things. Either I am being crazy and that thought can just go away and, like, thank it for its first presence, but it's not longer needed, or realize that I'm not, and I need to dive deeper. And as I do that more, as I get it out of the over processing brain and into, like, the ether, it helps me gain perspective, and it helps action, right? Because you talk lizard brain, the fight or flight. I think a majority of us, myself included, actually fall into a third category, which is freeze. I will do nothing. And I think a lot of people, especially in a high stake situation of trying to find new work, the freeze mentality is more prominent, because I just don't want to screw this up. I can't afford to make the mistake. And so you just do nothing. And so if you can plot out that worst case scenario, there's an amazing TED Talk by an author named Tim Ferriss, where he talks about, well, instead of, like, plotting out your dreams, plot out your nightmares and figure out what has to happen, right? Because I'm sure we've all been in a place where, like, we lose a deal, we don't get the interview, the attractive person at the bar tells us no thank you. And in 3 mental leaps, we're like homeless under a bridge, right? But it actually won't happen like that. So if you can plot out, like, what will have to happen. Okay, you think you're going to lose your house? Okay, well, what actually has to happen in what quick succession from you being where you are now to, having your house repossessed or your car repossessed? What's it going to take? And I think by mapping that out, you realize that the odds of this happening are not as prevalent as that lizard brain is telling us.
Mm-hmm.
And then it allows you to say, cool, how do I prevent this? How do I prevent this? Who can I talk to about this problem? And so by plotting things out worst first, I think A, it makes everything else seem like gravy. The worst actually isn't the worst. And then two, you feel empowered to take action, even though your brain is short-circuiting on, your imminent doom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The freeze thing is real, right? And this is where we find candidates struggle when, let's say they have been in a role for a very long time, and now all of a sudden they've retired from that position or finally walked away after all these years, right? When you've been in one profession for a very long time and all of a sudden you leave that profession, at first it's exhilarating because you are overwhelmed with options and possibilities, right? The whole world is a possibility. I could do this, I could do this, I could do this. And what happens quickly is you get overwhelmed with options. And when you're overwhelmed with options, you freeze.
Yeah, you shut down.
Right? Mm-hmm. So we see candidates struggle on the front end. They can't get momentum behind their career transition because they have options paralysis, too much uncertainty. They freeze, like you said. Or on the other end is you get comfortable and you get stuck, right? Mm-hmm. This job is fine for now. It's meeting my basic needs. It's not great, but I'm not uncomfortable enough to actually make the change. And so I freeze. Mm-hmm. And time just passes you by, right? Mm-hmm. What advice do you give to candidates to get unfrozen?
Mm-hmm.
It's about creating enough internal courage to say, this is what I want, and this is for sure as heck what I don't.
Mm-hmm.
I think that clarity, and I would even say start in the negative. This is what I do not want. I think a lot of people think, we talk about purpose, meaning, change. It seems like this North Star. And I think sometimes that can feel amorphous and big and really like overwhelming. Mm-hmm. But I think sadly, as humans, the lizard brain, we know what we hate. We know what brings us pain. Let's identify all that first. And then how much of that are you experiencing? Mm-hmm. The complacency, the tolerance of work, the lack of influence, the lack of, the right people around you, and so forth. And then with that, what you're getting away from. So by running away from something, albeit it's not a great long-term solution, but it can be a great catalyst for change. So let me get away from what I hate, so it pushes me towards wanting to identify what I love. Mm-hmm. And so if you feel yourself stuck, I would argue it's not stuckness. You're just not giving yourself permission to move.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What do you see is often the case with your clients, why they're stuck and why they're not giving themselves the permission?
They don't think it's possible. I've done this one thing at this one company, or I'm pigeonholed in this thing. Nobody else will think about me otherwise, or I'm not as good as I think I am. I need more time. I need more education. I need more certificates. And ultimately, the stuckness, I could say, is they're afraid of having those worst fears confirmed by an outside party. Mm-hmm. That imposter syndrome has become an imposter identity. Mm-hmm. And they're like, well, if I stay in this Schrodinger's box, so to speak, of possibility, if I don't test it, but I think I can do this, then I'm in this happy medium. Mm-hmm. But once I put my resume out there, once I go for that interview, I have to put my money where my mouth is, so to speak, and say, I can do these things. Mm-hmm. And if I get told no, then my worst fear of being a fraud, of being an imposter, of being not as good as I think or say I am, comes true. And then what?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Tori, following on that, I know you and Kolby had some exchanges around language, both verbally, but also the language candidates are using on resumes, on their LinkedIn, and then from there it translates into nailing the interview, right? Usually those kind of the step one, step two. I'd love to hear you and Kolby talk a little bit more about language and then nailing the interview.
Love it. And I think the listeners today want to know that too. Resumes are a big point of question and conflict, I'd say. Conflicting opinions as to what should be included on your resume. How long should your resume be? How are you positioning yourself? Do I really need to change my resume for every role I'm applying for? And then the similarities and differences between your resume and your LinkedIn profile. And how are you really marketing yourself to the audience that you want to get in front of for these jobs? And I know we have our thoughts and we often share that with our candidates or our clients, but interested to hear your perspective on what should be included, should not be included on resumes, and how to best present yourself from a position of strength.
Trevor, when you and I saw each other last month at the San Diego Shimmer event, you talked about a candidate-focused application interview process. And it is the thing I would say 99% of organizations out there are not doing. And so as a candidate looks at the process, it is hard because what I say is you have to be the product, the marketer, and the salesperson at the same time all the time. And that's a lot of hats to wear, especially when that product is the person in the mirror. And so, and we've been taught that success in our careers is based on what we can do moving forward, leveraged from what we have done in the past. But as we've talked about already, and I think what helps my clients rise above the rest in terms of being 1 out of 100 or 1,000 in a stack, is we are empathizing as much as possible with our audience to try to understand what their actual needs are through what potential pain and suffering, to be a little bit hyperbolic, they're facing that they would love the next person in this role to solve for them. Right? A lot of times, if you look at your resume now, odds are it reads less like a piece of marketing and more like a job description that would be posted on Indeed or LinkedIn. And what you're telling the decision maker, and I would love to hear your two positions on this, is like, this person's qualified. They check the boxes. But how much different are they? How are they going to be a sure thing? How can I stake my reputation as an internal or external recruiter, as an HR business partner, as a recruiting sourcer to say, hey, I think you should talk to this person over everybody else. What's the why there? And so if you're looking at your resume and you're simply just checking the box, as we mentioned earlier, Trevor, like being a really good job doer, you're competing with 99% of everybody else. But if you're looking to elevate, to come from that source of strength, ensuring that your resume, its thesis statement is, here is an expert that has solved similar problems that you're facing. Here are the outcomes they can bring. Would you be interested in experiencing those benefits? We talked about having that, giving them that sense of relief. Oh, crap, like we are facing this problem with spending. It looks like they've done it. It looks like their turnaround. They could do a fraction of that here. What would that mean for us? And so not only are you different than everybody else who is throwing their resume into ChatGPT or the applicant tracking system optimizers, but you're actually speaking to the needs of the person who needs you yesterday.
Selling yourself so they would be missing out if they do not hire you, right?
Missing out, and they would be continuing to experience the pain and frustrations that they had today, tomorrow. Like we talk about the lizard brain, right? Like we as humans act not necessarily to enhance our joy, but to absolutely limit or eliminate our pain. And so if you can be the problem solver, the pain reliever, that's how you become in demand versus desperately throwing your wares out there hoping somebody wants to buy.
Good point. And the KPIs, let's talk about that. Oftentimes folks they're leaving the data out of their resumes, and there's the rainbows and butterflies, but not necessarily the proof that we're looking for. And let's name it, we are our own worst critics. We do not sell ourselves very well, but if I had to write a resume for yourself or Trevor, I'm sure it'd be great. But what are you seeing there? What advice are you offering clients about really expanding the impact that they've had and realizing the impact they've had? So that also contributes to the confidence that they need to be successful in the interviews too.
Yeah. The number one pushback I get when I tell my clients they have to take better ownership of the work they've done, they say, well, Kolby, I didn't do this all by myself. And I really actually love hearing that. It means I'm not working with a complete egomaniac, which is a plus. What I say there is like, if you don't own this and that your contributions to this thing, who suffers? Yes, you suffer as the candidate, but who out there is suffering because they don't have a solution to the problem that you can absolutely bring? So that's kind of one part of it. So we get them out of that overly humble stake of like, I just work really hard and I care a lot, which are not bad things. They just can't be the only tent poles you have in the case of why they should hire you. I think if you can think about what you do and ultimately why it's being done, and I think a lot of companies don't do a very good job at this. They say, okay, I need you to write this report and have it on my desk by tomorrow. But there's no why, there's no purpose, there's no deeper meaning to it. And so we just kind of go through the motions. And so if you are employed currently and you're thinking about transitioning now, today is the right time to start gaining a bigger understanding of the reason why you're being asked to do what you do, why your expertise is being leveraged in the way that it is on a daily basis. And you get to look at it and ask yourself that. Ask the stakeholders, ask your boss, ask your boss's boss why this is done the way it is, what impact you're having. Because it's imperative that you show KPIs and numbers because it's the language of business and even nonprofits as well, right? You're being seen. And I say this to my clients all the time. I don't mean to dehumanize anybody, but as a candidate, you're being seen as an asset to the organization. Same as if they're buying a warehouse or renting a forklift or getting a new copy machine. You need to have an intrinsic return on investment of not only your salary, your benefits, the time to hire you, the time to manage you, all that stuff. And if you can, the numbers will help showcase to the decision makers why you're going to have an immediate high return on investment. Because if you don't have that, then there's no chance you're going to be considered for that role.
Yeah, that is really sound advice. And going back to what Tori was mentioning earlier about KPIs, what I have found, what makes a resume really pop, proof is in the pudding, right? It's loaded with data points, dollar signs, percentage symbols, numbers, right? And I hear candidates say a lot, well, my role is an administrative one. I don't have anything to do with sales and business development or fundraising. But every role, like you said, was created to generate economic value, either directly or indirectly. And if you really think about it, every role can be quantified. The impact can be quantified, right? It doesn't have to be dollars and cents. It can be efficiencies. It can be reducing the number of suppliers. It can be increasing eyeballs on marketing pieces. It could be growing donor portfolios, donor retention. Almost every job, if you really break it down and spend some time thinking about it, is data rich. It just takes the time and the mindset and then getting those data points into your resume, because you're absolutely right, Kolby. I find that 90% of resumes just read like a regurgitation of a job description, right? The candidate is literally copying and pasting their job description, putting their name at the top and calling it a resume. And sure, that says what the duties and responsibilities attached to your job title were, but it gives us no indication of A, did you even perform any of them? And B, if you did, how well did you perform it? Right? It's purely speculative. Right? There's no value communication through a resume written from that vantage point. It also reads, like you said, incredibly generic, right? It reads like every other resume that's come through AI. Versus a resume that highlights your individual contributions, directly and indirectly. Team contributions are also important, that you made during your time in that seat, right? Because those data points are uniquely tied to you. That's your story. The candidate who had that job before you and whoever comes after you, they can't say that same stuff. And so that's how you shift from a resume that just is a laundry list of duties and responsibilities, into something that tells your story through impact delivered. and like you said, through economic value delivery.
And I would say the standard resume, the way that I position it is like, here's the thing I can do. You tell me how to help you.
Mm-hmm.
You're putting the onus on the decision maker to say, well, how does this person fit? And when we often apply for jobs just by going like this,
Yes,
the volume is increasing, right? The
Mm-hmm.
noise is also increasing. And you guys don't have the time to try to fit oblong shapes into defined holes. And so if you can be more specific about how you can help, the impact you can make, you're not going to be for everybody, which is fine. But the people you are for, the people who are suffering from those problems that you can solve, are going to leap at you. And again, you become in demand versus praying somebody will take a chance on you because you're giving them. I mean, I would argue you're just kind of playing the job lottery. Let me just put my raffle ticket in the box and hope my thing gets picked. And it never works out like that, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And what advice do you have for LinkedIn and the posting approach that folks have on LinkedIn, sharing frustrations, which job hunting is deflating. It's a full-time job and it's deflating. When you hear no, or you start thinking, I'm not good enough. It's the whys, it's the what ifs, it's I'm always second runner up. This does not feel good. I'm not good enough. So then I'm going to share that frustration on LinkedIn. So, using LinkedIn as a traditional social media platform. So thoughts on that, but two, using it as a networking tool. So a benefit. And then how are you presenting yourself and marketing yourself on LinkedIn to be that attractive candidate that you hope to be?
The venting, the misery needs company. And I've been there, right? Like, I think we've all kind of rage posted more than once in our lifetimes. I think there's a place for that, right? But I think in that you then, because I'll admit, like, and I think Trevor, you talked about this at the talk last month. I was like, there's vast portions of this process that are broken, that have not evolved with technology, that have not evolved with the needs of the market and the candidates. And so we understand that this is not what a church will say, like, democracy is the worst form of government except for all the others. Like, we have what we have right now. And so I think those venting portions is great. I think if you can then bring it back to, and what value are you adding? Like, what kind of likes, what kind of engagement are you hoping for? If you want to commiserate with other people in your spot, then post that thing. If you're trying to, like, say, like, this is what I hate about job searching, I'm looking for a company that does it this way, and be a dog whistle out to who you want to connect with. Great. I don't want anybody to censor themselves because they fear repercussion, but it's just like, what do you want back from the messaging you're sending? That's number one. Number two, in terms of, like, what you should be posting, I think, again, it's my job to empower professionals to see themselves as expert problem solvers. So your posts, your reposts, your sharing of articles, your sharing of the news, your comments should all come from that place, right? Because this is, what I'm teaching here a little bit is sales. It's like, okay, you can't always get the timing, but you can try to do your best to be top of mind when somebody needs you. If you only speak up once you think it's that perfect moment, you're probably going to be too late. So going out there and creating a regular cadence, I recommend like 5 to 10 minutes a day for like 3 or 4 days a week. I don't needs to be a third job that somebody has in top, so looking for a job and having a job. But just being on the platform regularly enough to hopefully pop up on somebody's feed the moment they need you, or to be associated with, oh, Kolby's the job search expert. So I don't need, if you're not looking for a job right now, that's fine. But when you do, I would love to be top of mind for you. It's my job to be in your feed as that value additive expert, sharing my opinion, my stories, what I've seen on the internet, to be helpful with that. And then lastly, we mentioned, Tori, is kind of networking. And I have been trying my best to limit my use of that word, mainly because it has and is a negative connotation. The blackjack dealing guy at the the event who's trying to just share as many business cards as possible. We've all encountered and been cornered by that person, unfortunately. I think, how do you go out there and develop genuine human relationships, right? And I think the best way to start with that is to leverage the ones that you already have. One of the biggest mistakes I see job changers do is they think they have to, especially if you're looking to pivot in a whole new industry, they think, I gotta go get a whole new group of friends and acquaintances and network who are in that place. Versus simply like going to who you already know, who have you already invested social capital in, that you can start taking some withdrawals from, whether that's a conversation, whether that's an introduction, maybe that's an actual opportunity. And then playing the 6 degrees of separation. We're here in San Diego. Before we got on here, Trevor and I were sharing a moment where we have a mutual friend who I know from my kids' preschool, right? Like San Diego is like an awesome small, big town, big, small town. Like you just can't go anywhere without running into somebody you know. So by leveraging those relationships first before trying to cold email or cold outreach will get you a lot farther, a lot faster.
I love that. And just that job hunting, per the Job Huntr, is highly relational. It's not transactional. It's not the blackjack dealer giving the business cards left and right. It's not the what's in it for me. It's what's in it for the collective. How can this be mutually beneficial? When Trevor made the introduction for the two of us, Kolby, I was shocked because I learned, and I'll share openly, that my sister was a client of yours. So being able to see that other perspective of somebody going through the process with you that was making a significant career pivot, a big transition during a very uncomfortable time when the market is inundated with fellow job seekers. What advice do you give when you get to the transition from resume building, applying to actually nailing the interview? There are some very hard questions that you might be asked. Oftentimes that's where the imposter syndrome really takes front stage, and overthinking. We've all been there. Am I saying what they want to hear versus am I saying what they need to hear? How am I positioning myself? What strategies and tactics do you share with your clients when it comes to interviews?
So again, so the way that I look at it, I think historically we felt that the interview is this drastic differences of statuses. There's the manager who has all the power, who can give or take away the opportunity. And then there's the lowly candidate who is just kind of hoping to be worthy enough for opportunity. I kind of call it the big brother, little brother syndrome. It's like the big brother is keeping the basketball just out of reach of the little brother. And I might be talking from experience. I know I'll be talking from parental experience here shortly. But it has that sense of desperation. How I coach my clients looking at the process is it's no longer manager. It is job haver and problem haver and problem solver. You two are there to meet in the middle. There is equal ground. It's a symbiotic relationship that everybody needs to buy into in order to make this work. And so if you go into the conversation, not trying to prove value or worth, but to first understand and then to share expertise and experience to hopefully deliver a favorable outcome, that's how you quote unquote win this process. And so I think what I don't recommend is going online and doing your research and going on ChatGPT and saying, okay, based on this job at this company, give me the top 50 most frequented questions. You're going to short circuit yourself. You're going to absolutely be overwhelmed and anxious, and you're going to go in on the defense, praying to God that what you studied is going to be on the test. Instead of getting really clear on what are your strong stories, what are the things you're excited to tell and share, and then having a deep enough understanding of the complexities, the nuances, and the people in those stories, where you could take, you have the ingredients to make any meal out of what question it is. So, and then I think even beyond, before you give your first answer, I think beyond the opening one, which we might talk about here in a second, it's your job as the expert to get clear on the problem before you propose a solution. So at any time you get a question and you're not 1,000% sure why that question is being asked of you in that moment for that role, it is up to you to say, well, it's interesting. I've done a lot of work in, B2B, corporate development for mid to large size nonprofits. But why now is the time for you guys to ramp that up? Right? Are there more programs to fund? Did you have a big donor drop out? Like, help me understand why this is the priority now. And maybe in their responses, you'll be able to really understand what they're asking. And I would argue, pull out a really vibrant and valid story, because you're just getting more context and more detail of the why.
I think the natural, right, and it's probably where you were thinking of going next, the natural next step is, of course, you get the offer and negotiations, right? Which we could probably do a full hour plus just on negotiating, right? But before we get there, I want to highlight a couple things that you and Tori just mentioned, because they are so foundational. Again, going back to the mindset, right? The mindset drives the strategy, which drives the tactics. And if the mindset isn't there, everything else falls apart, right? You're wasting your time studying tactics and strategy. Tori mentioned the loneliness of being the little kid who doesn't have the basketball, right? When you are the job seeker, you are spending a lot of time in isolation at home behind your laptop, right? And doing a lot of research, customizing a lot of resumes, sending a lot of resumes, trying to do all this online networking. You're putting a ton of time and effort and expending a lot of energy, and you're not getting much back, right?
Yeah.
Most of the time, you just don't hear anything. Some of the times you get rejection. Obviously, the no response is taken as a rejection as well. So you are like bearing your soul time and again and getting nothing in return. And it is, I think Tori used the word, very depleting. It is extremely depleting, extremely lonely, and it will wear your battery down. And I think a lot of times we don't recognize that. And so as a job seeker, giving yourself some space, giving yourself a little credit that, hey, this is really hard. And I may not have gotten many results today, but you got to have some way to track your activity. And if you can look back on the week and say, hey, I didn't get any interviews this week, but I did contact 50 new people, right? And I know that if I'm touching enough people, that's going to lead to conversations, interviews, et cetera, right? So this is a case where if you sweat the small stuff, the big stuff takes care of it. But you got to just recognize that this is really hard and lonely, and you got to do stuff to put some deposits back in your energy bank.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the negativity will start to seep out. Your job seeking efforts, right?
I say you cannot be a whole candidate until you are a whole human. And so if you are grinding away at your computer all day, and I don't think the problem is simply just time in front of screen. It is, how many mental cycles are you dedicating to this, even unconsciously? If you're looking for a job from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., that's great. And the computer might, be in your backpack or in the back room. But if you're making dinner, if you're sitting down with your family and you're still thinking about the search, if you're still doubting the email that you sent, if you're still playing Monday morning quarterback with your decisions, then that's what leads to burnout. It is not, I don't think it's the physical work in the search. It is, how are you purposely disconnecting? And I think one thing you said, Travis, is really important. A great way to do that is to measure your progress and to understand that, unfortunately, in this process, the success is very binary. Either you have a new job or you don't. And unfortunately, you can measure that success a million times a day. And so how are you gauging success? How are you gauging progress? How are you giving yourself credit? And then how are you giving yourself permission to consciously uncouple from this process, so you give your brain and your soul time to recharge?
Yep. And outlets, right? I think the rage posting should not be done on your LinkedIn page. It should be done over a beer with a friend or over coffee or something like that, right? Giving yourself these outlets to vent, but then also having things going on, whether it's exercise or watching comedy or something that brings you joy and charges your batteries back up. Because if you try and do job search stuff Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, you will your head will explode in week 2. Like it is just a recipe for disaster. So you've got to modulate your activity and do it when you're at your best, right? We all have energy flows throughout the day. If you know that like you hit a wall around 2 p.m., that is not a good time to schedule phone interviews, right? You want to do it when you are at your best, which then carries back to the interview, right? And I love that you said, don't go into the interview on the defensive. And I love that phrase, because we've always coached candidates that you can't look at it as an interview as something that happens to you, right? Because that implies defense. That implies someone else has the initiative. In reality, it's flipped. You as the job seeker, you're the one who's asking for the interview, right? You applied for that job. You reached out to network. And instead of feeling like you're going before the firing squad, instead, it's sort of like, Kolby, if you're the hiring manager, it's me, Trevor, saying, hey, Mr. Goodman, I want to have a conversation with you. I think there's a mutually beneficial relationship here. I want to get to know you and I want to get to know your organization. I'd like to have a conversation. Let's schedule something. Now, with that mentality, I'm in the driver's seat, right? I initiated this conversation. So an interview is a conversation that you, the job seeker, are initiating, which by definition means you're on the front foot. So you got to go into it thinking, I'm on offense here, not on defense. It changes the entire power dynamic and the entire perspective of how you do your interview prep and how you walk into that conversation. The other piece, I'll just add real quickly, I'm going to hand it back to you too. Kolby, you mentioned stories, 100,000%, right? There's this quote by Mark Twain that I use in our career transition seminars. It says, if you always tell the truth, you don't have to remember anything, right? And candidates get paranoid and they waste so much mental capacity and effort trying to memorize the perfect interview question responses, when really you shouldn't be memorizing anything. Because first, it's going to sound like canned regurgitation, like we talked about on the resume. But it's also going to sound super generic. An interview is a conversation about the impact you have delivered in your various roles, told through stories, right? So you just all your interview prep is just refamiliarizing yourself with where you have had impact in your various roles, those situations, i.e. the stories. You just brush up to refamiliarize yourself with that, and then boom, walk into the interview. Your prep is done. And now, if a question comes your way, you just reach back into your quiver there and pull out the story that best suits that question. And if you're telling the story and it's 100% true, you got nothing to memorize. Like,
you don't need to overwhelming yourself with trying to predict every question is a recipe for disaster. And I even if you succeed in the process, right? Because if all you're being asked is obvious, generic questions, your ceiling in that role is going to be super low, because you can, and you talk about being in the driver's seat. This interaction is ideally the first of an infinite amount of ones with these leaders. And if you're walking into the door and they have obviously not prepared or reading from a script, have also chat GPT'd what they're going to ask you as much as you chat GPT'd what you're going to be asked, then the depth and the meaning of that opportunity is going to be super shallow. And so, I've had clients who have developed enough confidence and excitement about their candidacy who have removed themselves from interview processes because they know that this is not going to be a fit. Because Mr. Manager, you're approaching this process in a way that feels really generic, cookie cutter. And I'm not a generic cookie cutter person or candidate that wants to go work for you.
That's such a different lens. And takes a lot of training to be comfortable and confident with looking at it through that lens and not looking at it through a point of desperation, especially when you are 200 applicants in, or you are 6 months into the search process and you are absolutely deflated at this point. So maintaining that lens and that focus of the confidence, knowing what you bring to the table, what solutions you can solve on behalf of the organization. But not losing sight on it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah.
Discount that by any means. Before we move on, Kolby, one of the most dangerous interview questions.
Oh, yeah. I literally had this. I think I know what you're going to say. And I had an interview earlier this morning. And this exact scenario came up. I cannot wait.
It is tell me about yourself. And even worse, if you lean in beyond that and it's tell me your greatest strengths and your greatest weaknesses. So what is your approach to coaching through those questions, kind of do's and don'ts, and the reframing of, continuing to look at it from an advantage, from the lens of opportunity and solutions, but it's quick to go down the wrong rabbit hole in response to that. And not only in the response that you're choosing to give in your answer, but also in the length of your answer.
So you definitely
school.
Yeah. It's not a life story. This is not your, your biopic that you're trying to present in there. The way that I frame it is because I think this is an awesome opportunity. The first thing out of your mouth, again, we don't want to prove. You're already proven. It's why you are given the time and the space. I think you have an awesome opportunity in that opening answer to make a real connection with the other human being or beings on the other side of the table with you. And so what I coach on and how to answer the question is, tell me the story about your radioactive spider. And what I mean by that is, what is your origin story? Peter Parker got bit by a radioactive spider, woke up the next morning, he could shoot webs out of his hands, and he had, he could jump super high, and that was his turning point. What is your turning point? What is your origin story, right? I gave mine a little bit earlier here when I went into that annual review and I got told, meets expectations or, average. And that was when the fire was lit underneath me. Talk about, when did you know you had to take this path? You had no choice. Your energy, your soul, your mind, everything was pushing you in this way, right? Did you have an experience? Did you read a book? Did you have a teacher? Did you accidentally come upon a volunteering opportunity? Did you have a family member with that ailment or that, that concern? Talk about that. And then talk about how that's then inspired you to take steps to get you where you are here today. It helps you showcase not only what you bring to the table, but why you're choosing to sit in this chair right now and have the conversation. Because what the why does for you, it allows you to find common ground. Because maybe that person has a similar origin story. Maybe that person, is just, especially in not-for-profit and community-oriented work, like a why has to be part of your story. You can't just do it, show up and go through the motions. You have to be tied to the mission. So share that. And that way you give a human reason of why you're there to do professional work. And you're not either regurgitating your life story or what's on your resume. And you're not coming out of the gate trying to do a hard sell. A lot of my clients say, Kolby, I don't sell myself really well. And I say, good, well, let's not make you do that. We don't like being sold to. We know what's coming from a mile away, right? Even when it's super cute and they have green uniforms on and they have delicious cookies in the beginning of the we're still being sold to, right? We know that. So if you then stop trying to prove and to sell and to push your message and just say, hey, literally come sit with me and listen to why I'm here. It is such more receptive. You're getting such a good taste in somebody's mouth. And then ultimately it can then paint how the rest of the interview is going to go, because all your other stories can relate to that turning point, relate to that why that you established of the path that you've taken.
And the trap is, they've given you so much room to run, or you're going to run yourself into a wall, right? That's where candidates get stuck, is that question has no parameters. And the interviewer is strategically looking at, how do they control messaging? How do they use their time? Can they stay on point, right? It's also a huge opportunity. Like you said, Kolby, not to sell yourself, but to showcase your radioactive spider moment. But it's also, they've basically ceded control of the conversation to you, the candidate, and you can take it wherever you want to go. So be sure to take it somewhere, like you said, that showcases your strengths and tells your story and builds connection without selling too much.
Yeah. I mean, conveying, you're not trying to hard sell. And I think, making the connection. Like, I'd rather have you be like likable than most experienced in the stack. If you're the most likable, more people will take more chance on you than if you were the perfect candidate with all the right qualifications that was just kind of tepid in your personality.
1,000%.
Yes.
1,000%. Likability is ultimately what people hire for. Okay, so we being strategic with our time, just like that last interview question, we are nearing time. I'd love to pivot a little bit and have all three of us, and Kolby, I'm going to start with you.
Okay.
Give one piece of career transition / job seeker advice. If there's one thing you want folks listening today to take away, what would you share with them?
I love that. This is probably my most frequented piece of advice because I love it because it does reframe it in a way where you are in control. You have the power, which is you are no longer looking for somebody to give you a job. You are now looking for the right problems to have an impact. Right. So you're not asking for permission to take on responsibility. You're there to like go out there and seek out who's suffering from the thing I'm really good. And then puts you in the driver's seat. And it also allows you to speak the decision maker's language. So instead of searching for a job, go identify who is suffering from the problems you're best at solving.
Okay.
I like it.
All right. Tori.
We didn't get to it today, unfortunately, about negotiations. But
we could.
Yes.
Follow-up session.
It is definitely a follow-up session, but let's do a little Lead San Diego plug here right now. The best advice I learned in Lead Advance this past year was know your worth and don't settle for anything less. And I think that is definitely when the job search has been so hard and you finally get that offer before you. Kolby and I were discussing before we went live today about I don't want to ruin it. I have the offer in hand. I don't want to mess it up. Negotiate. Always negotiate within reason, of course, but know your worth and don't settle.
Good point. And even if you try and they can't budge, because again, working in the nonprofit sector and with public agencies, we know firsthand that a lot of times the salary range is what it is and they can't budge. But if you don't at least try, like Tori said, you will forever wonder, what if I just tried? What if I just pushed a little bit harder? You want to address that question and clear up that uncertainty so that even if you can't get that extra 5, 10K or whatever, you're going to feel a lot better, at least having advocated for yourself. Love it. I'm going to go back to something that we touched on earlier, but I want to reiterate this one. And that is this. If you can't manage it, if you can't track it, you can't manage it. And I'm referring to time and activity, right? Because that's what it all comes down to, this thing called life. How are we investing our time? And it is so critical to set up a system that works for you in terms of how you're going to track your time and activity. And our recommended format, is just offering this up as a suggestion, is a simple spreadsheet, right? Call it your job search or career pivot activity tracker, and it's simple columns that track organization, contact, date last contact, follow-up, date. Because you don't want to leave all these loose ends hanging out there in terms of career and networking, right? And you also need a way to know, am I managing my time efficiently? It might feel at the end of the week that I'm doing all the right things and talking to hundreds of people, but without tracking it, how am I ever going to know? And so if you have a simple spreadsheet and you just drop a 1 in the column for every job search activity, every email, every social media interaction, every call, every meeting or whatnot, and add them up at the end of the week, you can see, am I having a good week or am I having a bad week? Am I actually spending as much time on my job search as I think I am or not? And I need some kind of reminder to follow up with all these people, because chances are the organizations and the people that you're trying to connect with, they're all very busy. And I know this might be a shocker, they're probably not going to have a chance to respond to every call and every email on the first time. But most job seekers leave it at that. They never follow up. They send that 1 email, they don't get a reply, and then they think, oh, okay, well, I guess I'll move on to the next, right? the folks who get the conversations are the ones who are pursuing the opportunity until they connect with the human. And if you are not managing that and setting up some way to remind yourself, hey, here are the 50 organizations I'm pursuing. Here are the people inside those organizations, and here is when I'm due to follow up with them. It just all falls through the cracks, and you end up just treading water or spinning your wheels, right? So set up an activity tracking system so that you can track and manage your activity and make sure you're doing enough of those small steps, right? Sweat the small stuff. The big stuff takes care of itself.
Great. And Trevor, I do want to add that we offer free career transition seminars, and Kolby has been kind enough to agree to partner with us on a future one here in the coming months. So stay tuned for that. It'll be in person, and you'll be able to ask questions directly to Kolby there, as well as Trevor. And if I could leave a couple words to our audience, recognizing we are filled with HR professionals, active candidates, hiring managers. It's to be kind to yourself right now. It's a tough market. So be kind during your job search. Be kind to the folks that are applying to your jobs. Be kind to the hiring managers and the HR professionals and those recruiters that are on our team. We are inundated with interested candidates, and we're doing our best, as are you, doing your best to get your name out there. So have some grace with each other and have some kindness, but maintain that confidence that Kolby was sharing, and find the solutions that you are able to really help solve or share.
Awesome. Thank you, Tori. And Kolby, where can folks find you? What's the best way to connect with you if they want to get a copy of your 2 books? I think your book should be mandatory for all college-age parents too. Like when a kid enrolls in as a freshman, the parents should get mailed a copy of the parents' book.
I agree. I wholly agree. Best way to get a hold of me, just message me here on LinkedIn. Let me know that you found me on this awesome live today, so I can help you out with connections, with advice, with some feedback. You don't have to go about this alone. And like I said before, as you act as the product, the marketer, and the salesperson, but at the same time, all the time, I would probably say some of those parts of you need a little bit of help, and that's okay. You're really good at what you do and what you've done, but you might need some help on trying to sell that and market that to the world. So let me know how I can help.
Awesome. Tori, Kolby, thank you so much for being here with us today. And yes, we will definitely come back and do a session dedicated to negotiations. I think that is so, I mean, it's top of mind for everybody. That would be super helpful. And it probably does deserve its own hour because it's such a big, meaty topic. So to all those joining us here today, thanks for being here. And for those of you who are going to be streaming this at a later date, we hope you enjoy the streaming experience. And we're now wrapping up the February edition of Building a Winning Team, and we look forward to being back with you again in March. Thanks, everybody.